right, good afternoon, everybody. Learning Torah is an amazing thing because you find things that you don't expect. And every day, Baruch Hashem, for the last few years, I've been learning at least 2 Blot Gemara. And today was one of those days when it had something to do with not this week's Parsha, really last week's Parsha. Some connection, really a little bit to this week's Parsha in a sense, that the word Nephilim appeared in the Gemara that I was learning, Gemara in Chulin, Daf Kuf Chav Zayin Amud Aleph. That's Chulin 127a, where it discusses the tzav, a certain type of either a reptile or an amphibian. It's not clear exactly which it is. In modern Hebrew, tzav means a tortoise, and but there is some opinions that it might be some sort of an amphibian, a toad perhaps. And the quotes there from Leviticus, "V'atzav leminehu," that it's this animal, this type of a creature, whether it's a tortoise or a toad, or some say some other type of a lizard, maybe a monitor lizard or something else. And it says leminehu, according to its species. And as it says v'chan laharbos, I don't know if I'm saying exactly verbatim, but it says it comes to include other species. It says v'chein Nephilim or ben Nephilim. There's different gersos of the Gemara should be, whether it means and also the Nephilim or the son of the Nephilim, the sons of the Nephilim. An animal, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're biologically the children of the Nephilim, or as some people they pronounce it Nephilim, but the more proper Hebrew would probably be Nephilim. And then it mentions salamandra, which means salamander. I don't remember the other. There was another species that was mentioned there, the arod or the arvad. So the arod, the Gemara goes on to say, is a hybrid between a snake and a tzav. And whether the tzav is a turtle or a frog, that it's a hybrid between these two species, or some other animal, again, monitor lizard or something else that it might be. And that the arod, therefore, it's a very dangerous animal. And the Gemara discusses about this question. These species are not related to each other. They should not be able to form a hybrid. And it actually says it was a miracle, a nefarious miracle, in order that God did in order to punish the people of this particular town that were sinning so gravely by trying to create hybrid animals, and because meaning that if God did not create such an animal, this is where we get the idea that it's prohibited to play God, which is something that we hear very much in secular society or in Christian society. Is this a Jewish idea that we're not allowed to play God? And the answer is yes, we're not allowed to play God. We're not allowed to create chimera animals, not allowed to create hybrid animals. It is forbidden to do so, and it is also considered to be, the terminology doesn't mean playing God, but it means that if God did not create a species of animal, we are prohibited from trying to make such a thing. And that if we do so, God will punish us by creating a very horrific animal. And that animal is the arod, the arvad, which is in the various, it's an animal that appears in folklore, not only in Jewish folklore, but in European folklore. There are different names given to this animal, either the cockatrice or the basilisk, but there it's said to be not a hybrid between a snake and a toad, or a snake and a monitor lizard, but rather between a snake and a rooster. And the European version of the story is that it's when the rooster will lay the egg of this animal, which again, it's something that is not, these things don't happen. Roosters don't lay eggs. So again, that's the punishment for quote unquote playing God, for making this hybrid animal. The punishment is that something supernatural, miraculous happens, and that's how God metes out the punishment for such an anathema, and actually a sin. It's considered to be a sin to create hybrids. Once a hybrid is created, once a hybrid exists, it's not forbidden to use that hybrid, but it is forbidden to make the hybrid, both of animals and of plants, within Jewish law. So and so therefore this story, and it would seem that it's forbidden both for the Jew and for the Gentile to create the hybrid. So as far as this type of animal, the arod, the arvad, that's mentioned in the Talmud, that's very similar to this that you find in European mythology of the cockatrice or the basilisk, being some sort of a small dragon that is extremely dangerous. Even to look at it would be deadly, according to the European folklore about this animal. Here in the Jewish folklore, we actually have what would seem to be presented as a historical record of one of our great saints, Rabbi Chanina Mendoza, who was known particularly for his piety and saintliness. And Rabbi Chanina Mendoza, it's fascinating how you have a parallel to text in another tradition. So Lahavdil and the Christian, I don't remember which book it is, one of the epistles of Paul, I believe, ends off saying that if you have enough faith, you can drink poison or handle snakes and not be killed because of the power of your faith. That's in the Christian tradition, and you actually have some churches, some fundamentalist evangelical Protestant churches that are known as snake handlers. If you watch The Simpsons, you'll know that Mo Sizlak was born a snake handler and will die a snake handler. That's an action, and people heard that and not familiar, and they said, "What is?" I remember my mother. We were watching this episode of The Simpsons. She's like, "Is that a real thing? Is that a real religion? The snake handlers?" And it's not a religion per se, but it's a type of Christianity. It's something that you'll find in certain Christian churches. I think certain Baptist churches practice this, and certain other evangelical fundamentalist Protestant churches have this practice of snake handling. It's very rare, happens more or less in the American South, and my understanding is generally they will, these churches, they'll keep snakes that are not very healthy, and so when they're free handling these snakes, they're not likely to strike anyway, but they're demonstrating their faith by handling these dangerous animals, and that's a tradition that developed. The fascinating thing is, again, lahavdil, we have separation and differences between our tradition and another tradition, just like there was a difference between this folklore tradition of this animal that that we found developed in similar animals in the different folklores, being some sort of a hybrid animal of animals that are not really closely related. So this Arod, we have this similar story that there was an animal like this. Again, we're talking about a miraculous animal to begin with, a supernatural animal to begin with, and that its existence is, even though it's considered to be a biological entity, it's not considered to be something spiritual, it's considered to be something physical. It's presented as an animal that exists due to a supernatural miracle that God uses to exact retribution against those who dare to play God. And this animal is mentioned elsewhere in the Talmud, that it was attacking the people in the town, and where Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa lived, and he found the burrow where this, apparently it's a burrowing animal, and he found the burrow, the entrance to the burrow of this animal, this orod, this hybrid reptilian amphibian type of a creature, between a nachash and a tzav. So again, whatever, if a tzav is a type of reptile, so then they're both reptilian. But again, in the European folklore, it's presented as between a snake and a rooster, and we can discuss the questions: are birds reptiles? That's for another time. I guess they say biologically birds are more closely related to crocodiles and alligators than crocodiles and alligators are to other reptiles, and so therefore, if a crocodile and a snake are both reptiles, then a bird would also be a reptile. That's the understanding within the scientific world. The way that biologists, including, I know some people who are people of faith, who teach this, and they'll say, if you say that you and your cousin are from the same family, but you and your brother are not from the same family, that's ridiculous. Meaning, like, to say that you and your brother are from the same family, but you and your cousin are not. There's, that you could make an argument like that, but you can't make an argument that you and your brother, you and your cousin are from the same family, and you and your brother are not. And so that's the claim that's made, is that biologically speaking, the birds are more closely related to the crocodilians than the crocodile. That would be the brothers than the crocodilians are to the snakes and the turtles and the lizards and the twataras, which are the cousins. In that story there, in that analogy. In any event, so Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, he heard that this animal was terrorizing. This is a small animal, but it's a horrific animal. It was terrorizing the people. It was apparently a venomous animal, and very dangerously so. And that people were getting killed or hurt from this animal, this orod. And Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa put his heel on the burrow, on the entrance to the burrow of this creature, and the animal it bit Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa on the foot, on the heel, and the animal died because it bit Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. And Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa brought the carcass of the orod to the Beis Medrash, to the study hall, and he said, we see from here that it is not the orod, it's not this animal, this creature with its venom that kills, but rather the sin that kills, because Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa was such a saintly person that he would not be susceptible to the venom of this animal, because he didn't have a sin that would allow him to get killed from this animal. and there are several people that just said they were so sinless that they only died because of the original sin of, meaning that the sin of the tree of knowledge is what caused all human beings to be mortal, and that there are certain we die for our own sins, but certain people die only because of the sin of Adam and Eve. That's one part of the story. But then we go to this other animal that we don't have the whole story behind. It's called either Nephilim or the Ben Nephilim, and either Nephilim itself or the sons of the Nephilim. And I was looking at the various commentators and the commentators of the commentators, particularly using what's called the Sepharia app, which I often use when I'm looking at using the screen capture on the website, on the Google videos, on the YouTube videos rather. So I looked at the various commentators, and it came to a commentator that's quoting something else. It was the Malbim on Parsha Shmini, where he talks about the Tzav Leminehu, and he brings this Gemara that speaks about the different species that are related to the Tzav, and one of them is the Ben Nephilim, and there he says, he uses a German or Yiddish term. The Malbim was a Hasidic Yid from Galicia, and he says there the Riesig Schildkröte. So I looked up, first of all, what's a krote. A krote is a toad. And the Schildkröte, again, we find this anachronistic, for lack of a better term, understanding of a reptile versus an amphibian. We know that a toad is an amphibian. A Schildkröte, which means a shield toad, is a tortoise. And the Riesig Schildkröte would be the giant tortoise or the giant turtle. And then I think it was the Malbim or it was someone else, maybe it was the Aruch, who says that this Ben Nephilim, this animal, maybe it wasn't the Aruch, it was one of the commentators I saw there. He says it's an animal that lives in the ocean but lays its eggs on land, so that would be a sea turtle. And of course there are very large sea turtles, including the leatherback sea turtle, which is Taka a riesige Schildkröte. It's a giant turtle. We'll say all tortoises are turtles, so to call a tortoise a turtle, but not all turtles are tortoises. So to say a Schildkröte is a turtle, as opposed to a tortoise, it's not really that much of a stretch. So a riesige Schildkröte is this, and so it's a fascinating thing that although I saw another German a translation of the Talmud that actually said in its commentary that it might be a skink, which is a type of lizard that is very similar to a snake, but it has legs. Most skinks have legs. Now there are legless skinks, though, which is a very common type of lizard that exists all over the world. You have skinks, and so whether it's a skink or a turtle, again, that either way, we see that this Ben Nephilim is some type of a reptile, either a turtle or a skink, and again, these are not very closely related, other than being reptiles. But the fascinating thing that we have there then is that this Ben Nephilim is a reptile, and so therefore when we talk about the reptilian extraterrestrials, not only the Nephilim giants, but it's possible, based on the fact that a type of reptile that's a common reptile that we know about, whether it's a skink, which is extremely common, or a turtle, which is extremely common. These are both very common reptiles. It should be noted that Italian wall lizards are not skinks, by the way. I've heard two people tell me that the lizards that you find in Queens and other parts of New York City area, particularly in cemeteries, are a type of skink. I heard it was a Vietnamese type of a skink, and there are Vietnamese skinks, but they're actually not from the family Skinkidae, these lizards, but they are an invasive species, but they're from the lizardid family, which would be the old world lizards, of which there are many species, particularly of European lizards. These are often called the true lizards, and that's the difference, is that these lizards have a visible neck. The difference between the neck and the body and the head, that the neck is like our neck, a little bit thinner than the rest of the head and the body, torso. A skink, generally, not all skinks, but most skinks it's pretty much smooth, straight down from the head into the body, and no visible neck that's a little bit thinner. Like many snakes, although again, most snakes have a head that's a little bit, more visible than the rest of the body, and perhaps more like a legless lizard. A lot of legless lizards, which are not snakes, they're sometimes called glass lizards or sheltopusuk, and other species. There are actually many species of legless lizards, but in general, the legless lizards, their head and body are more contiguous, as opposed to snakes usually will have not like a neck, but their head will be a little bit bigger, But the main way you can tell the difference generally between a legless lizard and a snake, there's two ways. One is that they will have eyes that blink, generally. And another way is that snakes can't blink their eyes. But most legless lizards can. Not all lizards blink their eyes. A lot of geckos don't blink their eyes, but some do. But then the legless lizards also have long tails, which snakes really don't. For snakes, that's their body. It's not a head and a tail. It's a body with a actually rather short tail, as opposed to a legless lizard. That's why they're called glass lizards or glass snakes, because they can release their tail if they're caught, and so therefore you pick it up and it breaks in half, and that's why they're called a glass lizard, because it's similar. They're not actually made out of glass, but they'll break in half, and which snakes don't drop their tails the way that a legless lizard does. In any event, the lizards that you find in the cemeteries in Queens are the Italian wall lizards. Beautiful, beautiful lizards, related to the jeweled lacerda. In fact, I was at a pet store where they had some of these lizards that were from this invasive population, and I couldn't believe how big it was, because I'd seen them in the wild, the invasive lizards, and it's totally legal to collect them because they're invasive, as long as you don't release them back in the wild to make another population. I saw this, I said, oh, is that a jeweled lacerda? And again, it's from the same family, Lacertidae, known as the true lizards, as opposed to skinks. Skinkidae, it's a different family, although skinks are lizards, but they're what's often called the true lizards, similar how you have the true bugs, like the stink bugs, and those types of insects are considered to be quote-unquote the true bugs. So anyway, that's the fascinating thing, is that if a common type of reptile, whether it's a turtle, a tortoise, or a skink, more likely there were more descriptions of it being some kind of a turtle or a tortoise, and these giants that we find in the Bible as being some kind of hybrid, apparently between an extraterrestrial and a human, according to at least some interpretations that are commonly accepted. Even someone like Rav Aaron Soloveitchik, pretty mainstream person, Rav Yeshaber Soloveitchik's brother, major Rosh Yeshiva in Chicago, and then later in YU, when his brother passed away, and also just in general, very highly respected person, and his children and grandchildren are very prominent Rabbanim, including one of the Rebbeim in my yeshiva, even though I didn't really have a shaykhus with him, but Rabbi Leo Soloveitchik is one of his sons, and he's Rosh Yeshiva by Lander College, my alma mater, and Rabbi Aaron Soloveitchik was very open that his opinion was that when it says the B'nai Elohim, that the sons of gods came down and took the daughters of men in last week's parsha, that's talking about extraterrestrial biological entities. The question is, again, how did these things that are very different than us breed with humans? And so again, we can say either, like we said with the Arod, that it was a miracle that happened because of this thing of playing God that caused, that God, to punish us, created these beings. That's one possibility. The other possibility is that these extraterrestrial beings are in fact indigenous to Earth,